The personal value that I feel the strongest about, that's allowed me to get involved in estuary restoration, is seeking the truth. And right now we have a situation where the truth is not being, we're not living it, with the dam at the end of the Deschutes River and the estuary being blocked, so that the natural process can't happen. So personally, I come from a long line of stewards of the environment, and I remember a time when you could watch the salmon come upstream so thickly that you could walk on their backs to get to the other side. And I know that's a cliche, but it was actually the truth. That happened. And now I don't think the younger generations have that opportunity anymore. My kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids, I want to have that opportunity to be able to see the environment as it should be in its natural sense, and not blocked by man-made obstacles. I believe that the estuary should be restored because it's doing the right thing for future generations. We as a generation, I'm a boomer, you know, we as a generation, we don't want to leave a legacy of pollution and expense and invasive species, and a legacy of not being able to access the water. Right now you can't use the water in the lake, which is actually a sediment reservoir. It's not a lake at all by any true sense of the definition. And it should go back to being its natural estuarine environment. Again, I think that one of the most important relationships I have ethically with the environment is seeking the truth and seeking natural process. I want things to be able to happen naturally. I don't want man-made structures put in the way of the natural function of a river, the ocean, a lake, a true lake, streams, or fish and wildlife. The estuary needs to be able to flow freely. We need a larger opening to let the tide come in and out. I think it would help a lot with the wildlife issue we're dealing with invasive species, and it would allow people to access the shoreline again, and people then would be able to participate in nature instead of being pushed away from nature. We have this tendency as human beings to want to live by water, but then we want to put a wall up to keep the water from coming at us. You know, there's this weird dichotomy of, I love the water, but please protect me from it. We have to get over that. We have to realize that the water needs to breathe just like we do, and that accessing it, we need to let it come to us instead of us going to it. So, the biggest ethical dilemma that could affect the restoration of the estuary is, I think, an inequality in income and as it relates to a class system within the community. There are a lot of people right now that want to keep the lake in place because they have boats and yachts, and they use the marinas and the yacht club outside of the lake environment, and they want that dam in place to keep the sediment from coming into their area, so they don't have to dredge and spend any money. And that comes at the expense of all the other people that could be enjoying the estuary, that could have access to the shoreline and the water. It's a huge issue with the tribal treaties that we have in this state, to keep the tribes from enjoying and using the resource that they could be using, with more salmon being allowed to come upstream, more harvesting of grasses, and other things that the tribes have enjoyed along the estuarine shorelines for years and years and years. We have an ethical obligation to uphold the Medicine Creek Treaty in the South Sound area. And right now, that dammed estuary is not functioning in a way that that treaty can be upheld. How do we resolve the challenge? We take the dam out. And I don't know what that means in terms of timing. Right now, we have to get through an EIS process. We have to then present that to the legislature and see if they're going to allow an estuary to happen. A lot of people are saying, well, you know, we've got this $4 million. The state of Washington has $4 million to do this environmental impact statement. Why not just take that money and work on the two things that are the most important, sediment management and a long-term finance and governance structure for the area, and get the dam out and restore the estuary, and let's get some money to actually do the project instead of spending more money on studies. No, it's not all economic. It's aesthetic. A lot of people think that mudflats are ugly. When we first started this project to restore the estuary, the issue was we don't want any more stinking mudflats in the city. And there used to be a little area along the shoreline just below the Capitol building called Little Hollywood. And it was during the time of the Hoovervilles and the Depression era. And there were shanties all along the shoreline, were built out over the water. And there was no sewage treatment. So all the raw sewage would dump onto the mudflats. And people have a recollection, and there's oral and written history about how bad it smelled. So they think if these mudflats are going to reappear, suddenly it's going to stink up the whole town. Well, the smell of a marine environment isn't a bad smell. It's a natural smell. And the sewer issue has been taken care of now. There's also an ethical issue around sewage treatment and our sewage treatment plant in Olympia. There is a huge need for that plant to reduce its nutrient discharge into Butt Inlet. And right now, Capitol Lake is about 40 to 50% contributor to a larger nutrient discharge because there's no flow in the system. There's no flushing from the river. So that is a big ethical dilemma. If it doesn't happen, if the dam stays in, that means people in the area are going to pay more.